Hello everybody, happy Sunday. We are going live today with Michali instead of tomorrow to answer a question that was asked. Actually, I asked people to ask us a question early because we were doing it today versus tomorrow. So I chose something that had to do with upcoming Purim because I felt like that was something that was coming up a lot in last week's AMA and we didn't address it. So thank you, Michali, for joining. Let me just invite you. Thank you for joining Performance Talents and Bracha. I think I accepted you, Michali. Looks like you're joining. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Let me just make you a little louder. 1 second. Move you over.
I'm going to have to make you.
Okay, amazing. Hi.
Hi, nice to see you.
Likewise. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday and almost Purim.
I know. Are you in the spirit yet?
What?
Are you in the spirit yet? Or you've been in the spirit already?
Definitely.
Okay, amazing.
The house is like half decorated. We're big into like decorating the house before any holidays. So
amazing.
To add a little bit of fun.
I love that. I really love that. Yeah, I sometimes like when I don't decorate my house, but like I sometimes see houses that are decorated. I'm like that's like a cute family, like.
The most important for us is the music. Like music for us just totally takes us,
Totally.
to a different zone.
I used to
listen
to the Purim story on like one of these tapes. I think I should start doing that again. I could use
What
a
are the
refresh.
cassette tapes?
Like those tapes like years ago. Like we had the Purim story over and over in my house. I loved it. I thought it was like I just loved it. Somebody wrote in the comments that they hate Purim, so that's why we're having this conversation, my dear.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of hating Purim.
Yeah.
And questions. Yeah. So the question for today is, where do I hide because I'm dreading Purim so much? I moved, so I have no friends here. It actually really sucks.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would first say that you're not alone. There are so many people who have a lot of different conflicting feelings or just very clear negative feelings about any given holiday. Yeah. So we're about to we're about to face Purim, but I think that, I'm going to sound very shrinky now, but just like any holiday or anything that is touching a nerve in us, oftentimes there's the context surrounding that nerve that is going to determine how much that thing hurts us. So I think that, I would do a little bit of introspection and want to know more about, what is it that's making me dread Purim so much? What was Purim like for me growing up? This person's mentioning like a lack of community because they just moved. So is that the main thing that is contributing to them dreading Purim? Right. What is taking away their joy, right? And like really looking into that and coming up with personalized, customized ways to kind of counteract that dread, right? So
just to like interrupt for a second, I wanted to like generalize this question, even though like I chose this person's question, but there were so many people that wrote about Purim coming up and also Pesach, but we'll get to that in further in lives in the future. But I guess it sounds like you're doing that, like addressing it from a general perspective, but I just want to make that clear to the listeners that like we're really addressing this to everyone that is dreading Purim on some level. So just put out that disclaimer.
Yes, we're addressing to everyone who's dreading Purim on some level. And then I think in addition to that, it's also that it's the type of dread is going to vary from person to person. When I hear so many people tell me they absolutely hate Purim and then every reason is so different. Whether it's that they're not good with time and deadlines and then they have to be at Megillah reading at a specific time and that's stressful. Depending on where you live, traffic. For some people, it's totally fine, while for other people, it's very stressful. Coming up with themes or feeling insecure, feeling like you have to keep up with the Joneses and have these like super fancy shelf can be stressful for some people. So I think the different reasons that are given are going to require different ways of kind of like addressing the issue. But I think that it really depends on what the person wants to do. And I don't want to assume that the person wants to come up with a way of celebrating Purim. I don't know. I think that, I don't know where they are in their spirituality and religiosity, but I think, if they want to just have a quiet day with themselves and do some introspection and just kind of do a lot of self-care that day, and that works for them, fine. If they want to learn how to increase joy and kind of input it in the day in a way that's meaningful to them, then that's totally fine and like kind of like a different kind of situation. So I think that's why I'm a little bit hesitant to like say something specific because it's going to vary from person to person.
Totally. Yeah, but I like that you said that like it can vary. Like the reasons you're dreading it can vary. And like I think that if we avoid identifying the reason that we are dreading it, like what is that person's reason for dreading it? Like let's say this questioner said it's because one of the reasons is because they moved and they're super lonely. So like then create like a customized solution for yourself. Like what do you want to sit into the loneliness, or do you want to do something that would make you less lonely but maybe be a little bit more uncomfortable? If it's, let's say, you know, because people in family get drunk and they act inappropriately, then like what can you do? How can you problem solve that? So yeah, I like that. I think that's a solid piece of advice. Like really get into the details of what is making you dread it. What does it bring up for you? What nerve does it hit for you? I think that's like really important. Yeah. And then in terms of like, is celebrating it the traditional way going to make you the healthiest version of yourself, or is kind of like doing something completely different than everyone else is doing on this day going to be the healthiest for you? Like that's a determination that every person has to make for themselves. I think that I completely agree with that. I think that like another thing that's coming to mind is that people like we give ourselves like reasons, or we define what this means. Like when we dread something, like it means I'm something, like we give it a deeper meaning than it really is. And I think that gets people really stuck. Like if you're and this could be for like not perm, this can be for like a wedding that's coming up that you're dreading, this can be for a family get together that you're dreading. Like when we kind of like do introspection in the wrong way, where it's like this means that, yeah, exactly, pathologize ourselves, exactly. Like I'm thinking I'm missing like the word, but it's like we give it meaning versus like this is difficult and like it makes sense and it's difficult for this and this reason, but it doesn't mean that I'm never going to A, B, C, and D. It doesn't mean I'm never going to have a family. It doesn't mean I'm never going to be able to enjoy a family get together, or I'm never going to be able to enjoy perm. Like when we put on all these like meanings on these type of dread scenarios, I think it gets much worse versus it being like, this is 24 to 48 hours and I'm going to be uncomfortable, or it's not my favorite 24 to 48 hours of my life, you know?
100%, 100%. And I think that I would agree with you. I think that people add that piece of like how it kind of comes back to them in this negative way. And I also just want to really emphasize that, you know, I'm not a halachic expert at all, but just in my experience in working in private practice with religious Jews, and sometimes being asked to be the middle person between a client and their rabbi, there are so many provisions, so many exemptions that are made for people who struggle in different areas of mental health and that blend with, you know, Torah observance. So just as an example, if someone grew up in a home where there was, you know, there were alcoholics, right? Purim could be incredibly triggering, and you know, understanding like the role of alcohol in a person's Purim is a great conversation to have if you do have a relationship with a rabbi and that's meaningful to you. Same thing with fasting on Tanis Esther, right? If someone has an eating disorder, chances are they're not going to even be allowed to fast on Tanis Esther, right? If someone's stressed out about, you know, having fancy themes for Shalach Manos, you know, if you would ask like what is like the basic halachic minimum, it's very, very little. It's not, we're not talking about giving every single person you ever said hi to a huge, beautiful gift basket, right? Like, like, so I think I want to also just make a distinction between like what are like the bare bones of the day and what, most importantly, what those intentions are of doing those rituals, and then also like what it has become, you know, societally and culturally, and to kind of really make it your own in that way. If that is something important to you, if observing Purim is important to you, but you feel overwhelmed because of how it's being observed in today's day and age, then just know there are so many options, right? So I love what you said in terms of like this specific question. Like you can use it as a day if you don't feel like being with people and you're not in that space where you want to get to know people and branch out, then use it as a day to really turn inwards, and use it as a day of prayer or journaling or you know, self-love, or celebrating yourself as being this like Jewess or Jew who survived so much persecution, and there's this like deep resilience in your bones, right? If you feel like branching out, then maybe make your own, Su'uda, and, invite, reach out to the shul or, the synagogue, and ask them if there are other people who need a place, to have the Su'uda, and then get to know people that way. Or, if there's like a community meal, then join that, right? So there's like a lot of options based on what your goals are for the day. And it doesn't have to just be like, if I can't meet where everyone else is at when it comes to celebrating the day, then like it's not for me.
Right.
There's so much middle in between that.
Totally. And whatever you see usually, like, when we look outside of us and we're looking at what other people are doing, like you're seeing the highlight reel moment and you're creating a whole story around that too. So like, just because you're going to be on social media and seeing these gorgeous themed families, that's not the reality. That's a snippet. That's 60 seconds of somebody's life. So just like remember that, and probably it's a good idea for anyone that's struggling or dreading Purim to stay off social media for the day or 2 days.
Yeah.
Like
Also sensory-wise. I just want to say, for people that get very overloaded in a sensory kind of way, Purim is not an easy day for that. So also balancing that out with calming down our nervous systems and grounding ourselves, and having some quiet time, I think is also important. I forgot to mention that when it comes to like some of the points that people make about Purim and how hard it is for them.
It's very stimulating.
100% with what you're saying too. It's not a real.
Exactly.
It's not a real.
Exactly. And then another thing is like, also it's not like, I think we group it together with like Purim automatically means Pesach, and that freaks people out. So like, Purim think like, okay, maybe Purim is manageable, but all of a sudden Purim became Pesach. Like it became like, when Purim's here, Pesach's here. And like, again, that's like something that like is a mind trick. Like Purim is here, Pesach is not here. And like, one step at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, 1 minute at a time. Like do whatever you need to do in that moment, whether it's a minute at a time or an hour at a time or a day at a time. Like you get to decide, but certainly not like 2 months at a time. Like no one told us we have to do that. Like honestly, no one could do 2 months at a time. Like no one knows what tomorrow's going to bring, let alone 2 months from now. So like that's like where you got to like take your mind and be like, this is where I am right now. This is hard. This is really challenging. This is how I can problem solve around it. But don't think you have to problem solve Pesach now because you're a problem solving Purim. Like really, like not.
100%. I love that you're emphasizing that, and I couldn't agree more. I think the other last piece I think that comes to my mind here is that, to me, and this is just my own personal thing, and people can take it or leave it, but I think it's really about authentically connecting to the day. And so like today, our family activity is making hamantashen, and we decided that very last minute because normally I hate baking and whatever, as you very well know, Faye. And so I can start freaking out and stressing out about that, and then thinking, oh my gosh, how many do I have to make per shachmanos, blah, 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 right? I can go down that rabbit hole. Or I can say, no, let's take a breather, take a deep breath in, deep breath out, Exactly. Exhale all the stress away and get goofy, get dirty, get silly. Enjoy the process. However they come out, they come out. If they look completely weird and whatever, it doesn't matter. Who cares? Right? It's really about creating joy and connection to the day, right? And so it doesn't, ultimately, the appearance of it doesn't matter, right? And it's ironically, that's the message of Purim, right? It's like you don't know what's behind the mask, right?
Exactly.
It's like the appearance doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It's really what's, the essence of what's going on that matters, right? And so I think that ultimately it comes down to like how you authentically can connect to the day in a way that's meaningful to who each of you are.
In that moment.
And it's going to vary in that moment, and it's going to vary from person to person, and you can do as much planning as you want, and then you might find, come Tuesday, you feel very differently, and the way that you're going to define authentically connecting to the day is going to be different that day, and that's okay. And that's the beauty of getting it every single year, is that we get to express different parts of ourselves on that day in an authentic way based on where we are at in that moment. And so, like as I was saying, you do you, right?
I love that. Yeah, and you made me think of something, like maybe something to ask yourself is like, what will make me wake up on Wednesday morning and feel proud of myself, right? Like, so is it going to be like, if I said, 20 minutes of Tehillim? Is it going to be if I was able to bake something and have joy for 20 minutes, or put on music and dance and act crazy? Like whatever it is that's going to make you be proud of yourself, like take on a challenge, like a personal challenge is between you and yourself and God. And like, cause what you reminded me that when you were saying about like the, you know, making the hamantash, and like disconnect from the result, like the outcome does not matter. It's about you actually getting into the process of it. That's going to make you, that makes the day successful. Like if you get down and do it for kids, baking, that makes you successful today. However they come out, if they're inedible, it really doesn't define the success of the day. Exactly. So like that's another.
Even if my neighbor gets the inedible version of it, it's not going to destroy their relationship with me.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
It doesn't really matter.
You've had tons of joy, like with the kids and your so like that's like a perfect example. Yeah. Okay. I think we actually covered this like pretty solidly. I feel content with that. I am wishing everyone a beautiful Purim in whichever way you define beautiful for yourself in this season of life. And we will see you next week. And we're going to address Pesach coming and everything like that. Michali and myself have already conversed about this. So we have your back, everybody. And yeah, and one step at a time. Right now it's Purim. Purim's the focus right now. That's it.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Fay.
Thank you, Michali.
It was lovely to see you on a Sunday.
Likewise. Enjoy the hamantash.
I'll try.
Take care. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Bye-bye.